first person to ever do this in Philadelphia.
Maybe begin again.
My name is Elizabeth Dubin. I can talk really fast. I don't mean to be abrupt. But today I'm taking you on a field trip through the history of futuristic architecture. As Yogi Berra once said, the future ain't what it used to be. And I think my slideshow shows that in terms of architecture, it definitely ain't what it used to be. The topic came up as an idea after I was listening to XPN's annual Prague Marathon. And I was thinking about Roger Dean, who's the guy he was the artist that did all the art for a lot of these bands. The images on this slide span from 1974 to 1989. And Dean really seemed to fill a need that these groups had to associate their work with spacey, futuristic, and Hobbit-like architecture. So that's where my train of thought started. And I took a little journey throughout the 20th century to see what else I could show you. So they're not nuclear power plants, they're Buckminster Fuller's 1964 condos intended to be 100 stories and hold 45,000 people each. And you may know that he did not realize this dream. And he also didn't realize his dream to put a dome over all of Manhattan. But he may have been reacting to, against some of the urban ideas that preceded him. This is Frank Lloyd Wright's 1932 vision of Broadacre City, a totally decentralized apotheosis of suburban living. Everyone gets an acre of land and everybody commutes in little round helicopters. The Italian architect Paolo Soleri was one of Wright's students, and he actually developed his own iconoclastic philosophy of arcology, which is the marriage of architecture and ecology. And he's best known for starting Arcosanti, which is a sort of a commune 70 miles north of Phoenix that he started in the late 60s with a bunch of hippies. The interesting thing about the place is that it's been continuously under construction since the groundbreaking, and architecture students still make pilgrimages here to work for 6 or so weeks helping to build the dream. This model shows the overall design, and everything in white in the background was what hadn't been built yet, and everything in green in the foreground was what had been built, and it's shown here in this image. They basically raise money by selling bells to the tourists, and I think a lot of their forward progress now is being hampered by the fact that they already have to go back and fix the stuff from the 60s that's already breaking down. So I don't mean to be snarky about it. I really respect the stuff. Okay. So this desire to improve man's relationship with nature has been a theme of Western life since the Industrial Revolution. Here we have the self-named Hundertwasser, or Hundred Waters, an Austrian painter born in 1929 who turned his interest to architecture in the 50s. So there he was protesting in the nude in Munich, stating that the human has 3 layers, skin, clothes, and architecture, and he believed that we thoroughly have perverted the latter 2 and could reclaim them by stripping down to the first one, or something like that. This is Waldspiral in Darmstadt, Germany, and he calls the trees tree tenants, and he calls straight lines the devil's tools. Arakawa and Gins, shown here, actually share some of Hundertwasser's basic manifesto language. They're 2 New York-based architects who want to make dying illegal. And instead of accommodating the elderly, as is sort of the trend of Band-Aid, they want to boost immunity and increase longevity by making people work harder to occupy the spaces that they design. So there's a lot of uneven surfaces and, abrupt changes in levels and steps and things to trip on. But they want you to think of architecture as, quote, a tentative constructing towards a holding in place. Think about that. These are some drawings by Levius Woods, an architect best known in the 90s for his renderings provoked by war in Bosnia. And he was opposed to architecture that erases the past and wanted instead to occupy the destruction with futuristic insertions. He was also the conceptual artist for Aliens 3. But still, he was considered very seriously by the Architecture Academic Society. And I remember being pretty vexed by that as an undergrad, but we can talk about that later. Here's his design for reoccupation of a war-torn structure, and oops, that was his design. So this is Eugene Sway. This is Eye in the Sky Tower for Oakland, California, proposed in 2005. Seems to belong to a little bit of an earlier genre, like an earlier genre of the future, the 80s. Sway got kicked out of several architecture schools, including University of Oregon, Columbia, and several others. But Berkeley actually gave him 2 masters and a PhD. I really love his conviction and his exuberance but as Nina Garcia would say, I question his taste level. But this proposal, he took it very seriously, and he actually has a long list of all of the revenues that will be generated by this place, and also mentions that there will be an Irish pub on the top floor. Just like very specific. So here's where my notes end, and I actually just wanted to show you some images from Burning Man because I kind of feel like some of these are reminiscent of the solary arcologies and the arc shape, the way they lay out the camp every year. And the buildings that you see out there are really very futuristic, but without a lot of the rhetoric that these real architects came out with when they proposed all of their works. There's not much manifesto here, although the image in the lower right is Uchronia and has to do with aliens coming down, and so there's some manifesto about that. But most of these other ones are really just about people wanting to build amazing things on a desert backdrop and then incinerate them. And it's kind of beautiful because the rhetoric is very limited, so it's just sort of a fun way to look at the things people build when they largely don't have to talk about it. So I kind of went back and I was looking at Roger Dean again, and it turns out that he is a wannabe architect, and he developed this prototype called Willowwood, which is preformed concrete shells in the lower right-hand corner that will be sort of halfway buried underground. It's very Hobbit-like. And he actually built a prototype in a nature center in Worcestershire in England. And the person who posted this to her Flickr profile, it said, the caption under it was, "It's kind of sad now because it's all moldy and sad." And I guess it just shows that, as futuristic as you can get, you still might wind up a little moldy and sad if no one sort of catches on and builds your dream for you. So